If you've ever heard of Operation Mockingbird, it was a CIA program in the 1950s where the CIA manipulated the news across the country. It turns out the media had official relationships with people at the CIA to carefully control the narrative, control what you heard. And it remained a secret for 25 years. It was much easier back then. There was no internet, there was no social media, and no independent media like Newsmax. Fast forward 70 years, and the media in this country largely exists to parrot whatever's good for the Democratic Party. We've seen that. And things were going great until along came Donald Trump. And in 2020, Democrats and the media thought they won. They thought Joe Biden's win in 2020 was a correction. They thought Donald Trump was the aberration, but they were wrong. It turns out that Joe Biden was the aberration, and because of the choices they all made over the last 4 years, this happened.
NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House as this country's 47th president.
Former President Donald Trump will be our next president.
Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president, defeating Vice President Kamala Harris and making a political comeback unlike any in modern American politics.
All right, so the American people don't like liars. That psy-op failed. And as the nation gets ready for the future, it's important that we never forget the wrongs of the last 4 years. Take a look.
Let's be absolutely blunt about it. There were appeals to racism in this campaign, and there is racial bias in this country, and there is sexism in this country.
They think they can close out this campaign on racism and fear and hate. They think that will win.
And I don't know why Donald Trump can vomit racism and his supporters clap.
So none of it worked. And on November the 5th, we witnessed the greatest political comeback in American history, bar none, a historic moment, but not for the obvious reasons. Not because Donald Trump won the popular vote and all the battleground states and the Electoral College, not because he beat Hillary and Joe and Kamala. He beat the media. He beat the legacy media to the point where once dominant forces in the media, people and networks, are now on the verge of extinction. He beat them all, who for years made the conscious decision to cover up for this man.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
Joe Biden, what a visionary. What a strategic thinker, we were told. Sharp, cogent. None of it was true. It was never true, and no one ever apologized for it. But you knew. America knew all along. And they didn't like that.
What's wrong with you? Who raised you? What history did you read?
That's it.
Like, where are you from? Because you may claim to be from where I'm from, but you were not raised by the same teachers I was raised by. And you don't read.
For decades, so many of us thought that the news that we were all getting was just that it was news, but it wasn't. And now millions of people are questioning everything that they hear from the legacy media on a daily basis, and that will largely be the lasting legacy of the Joe Biden years in the White House, a turning point in the way people consume information, the end of the old ways. In the end, the legacy media Americans are no longer seduced by. The legacy media after the election has tanked. Ratings at some of the other networks have collapsed completely to the point where the Food Network was beating people making $25 million a year, meaning Anderson Cooper was losing to broccoli. I mean that literally. Since the election, we've already seen changes that wouldn't have been necessary if Kamala won. Comcast is spinning off its cable news channels. The president of MSNBC just stepped down. Anchors at CNN, CBS, ABC, and MSNBC are all taking pay cuts. Norah O'Donnell is done hosting the evening news. All of these people, all of these networks rolled the dice and gambled while they laughed at you and laughed at MAGA. As long as Kamala wins, we're going to be fine. That's what they thought, but Kamala lost, and they lost too. CNN yesterday announcing one of the biggest head scratchers I've seen since I got into this business 20 years ago. The morning show there, it's not good. Let's just say that. So the same executives that have made the same bad decisions over the last several years thought it was a good idea to move 76-year-old Wolf Blitzer to the morning show. 76 years old, waking up at 3:30 in the morning, hosting a show that has a new anchor team on average every 6 months for the last 10 years. Here are just some of the names: John Berman, Kate Baldwin, Sarah Snyder, Jim Acosta, Pamela Brown, Poppy Harlow, Phil Mattingly, Casey Hunt, Chris Cuomo, Kate Baldwin, Allison Camerata, Breonna Keeler, Caitlin Collins, and you might remember Donald Lemon. Remember Don Lemon? That experiment lasted for about 4 months. 16 people I just listed off, and I left people off the list. Guys, you think it might be your content and not the hosts? You think it might be if you stop lying to people, people will watch your show? My goodness. How many times are we going to do this? It's because you're lying. Donald Trump gets credit for ruining the modern Democratic Party. But I don't think he gets credit for breaking the 80-year stranglehold that the legacy media had on the national conversation. He exposed the establishment. He exposed the media. The media laughed when Trump called them fake news back in 2016. Fake news is mainstream now, worldwide. If you asked what fake news was in Namibia tomorrow, people would know exactly what you were talking about. Trump broke them. And instead of changing, the media kept doing exactly the same thing. And the last time I checked, people don't like being lied to.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.